Hi everyone, I'm Mindy Egan, and I'm so excited to be sharing the Concord and 9th July 2024 release with you. Welcome to the introduction to the Bootcut Stamp and Die Set. Now you are going to be create multiple cowboy boots or cowgirl boots, not only in layering up die cuts, but also layering up your stamping, and I'm going to walk you through those individually. So on the back of the packaging for the dies, it does give you some examples to get you started, and they are so much fun to create with. Now, first, let's take a look at the individual sentiments that are included on this stamp set. So you obviously have that large Yeehaw, which is super fun. Stay wild. I thank my lucky stars for you. I'm head over boots for you. Howdy and happy birthday. We have a cactus, some stars, a moon, and a horseshoe. For the boots, I thought it would be easier to show you first what it looks like all stamped out, and then I'm going to walk you through this step by step. So there are 3 different boot styles that I just did in a variety of colors. I have the flowers, there's this snake, I actually did 2 flowers, and then just kind of this really fun Western design. Here's a little breakdown of how the boots work. So that first image on that left-hand side, that first column, is one image. So you would stamp that first. The second image would be to fill in the bottom portion of your boot. And then your third image is going to be either the snake or there's like a little strap at the top of the boot with some circle designs. And then your flowers that you can stamp in green and red here. I did for my card example, but you can use any shade for the flowers that you'd like. Let's go ahead and stamp one of these out. So I'm grabbing the snake boot because I thought that was just a really kind of fun design. So I have a piece of white cardstock. I'm taking the main boot piece that has that snake on there, and I picked it up with the door of my Misty. Now, the first color I'm going to start with is Rainforest ink. So you're going to ink up your stamp really well, stamp that down, and it's going to give you the top of your boot and also the bottom portion of your boot or your heel or the sole of the boot. So I'll stamp that down. I'm going to clean my stamp off, and then I'm going to grab the second layer of the boot, which is going to fit right in between. So I lined that up with the sole of the boot, pick that up with the door of the Misty, or you can use a stamping block if you're more comfortable with that. And then you can either stamp it in the same color, or I'm going to stamp it in a lighter color, which is eucalyptus. So of course you can really customize and have fun with these, maybe shades of brown or shades of pink. When I was on Pinterest looking up different boots, there's actually a lot of really neat styles out there. Next, for our design here, I'm using the snake. So I grabbed the snake image and I'm lining that up in the open area of my boot. You can also use this image individually if you'd like to make a snake card. So I'm going to stamp my snake in Sprout ink because I want it to really pop from that rainforest ink that I used for the boot. So I'm going to stamp that down, and that's going to complete our image. And then we can use the coordinating die to die cut out our boot. So it would be the same similar steps for the other 2 designs of the boot. And here's a look again at the different ones that I did, maybe in shades of blue, or I did a pink cowboy boot. So you can really get creative with the colors on those. Before I get into the die cut boot, I wanted to share with you the examples. So first we have the word howdy. So you do have a die cut word. Now for the boots, I went ahead and put together a few different examples. I know the black, I'm sorry, is a little hard to see there on my black mat. So I'm going to bring in this Tide Pool cardstock to help that stand out a little bit more. But I think the black cowboy boots were just so stunning. You can add a little bouquet of flowers. You can do the horseshoe. We have these 2 different Western scenes, which I did one in kind of a daylight and the other one is nighttime. And then there's one where you can do the cactus. When I'm die cutting and working with the sets, I just die cut out a whole bunch of things in various shades. And so this is what I have spread out on my cardstock. And then I can mix and match. So I can create different colors of bouquets. There's the horseshoe, there's the cactus that you can add the little flowers to. There's some stars. There's also a circle that you can use for a sun. And then there's the little crescent for the moon. So lots of really great little things to fill in your boots. You can use these bouquet of flowers individually on their own or tuck it inside of the boot. So when you die cut the boot, you're going to have kind of one whole piece. And then the part that's got the scene on it, like for this one with the canyon, there is a die that cuts just the top portion that you can fill in with either the cactus or this canyon scene. So that's how you're getting like a gray boot, or actually it's pebble cardstock, and then maybe the tide pool. So here's a closer look at it. You can see I lined up the bottom of that top portion with the stitching of the boot, and that is just a really fun canyon scene. There's also a die where you can just maybe add a design to it. So I'll bring that up closer there. It's in the middle. It's got like these swirls in it to give it that Western design. I die cut mine onto black cardstock. I apologize, a little hard to see in the camera, but it is just a really neat Western design. Would look really nice on maybe like a dark brown cardstock. For my card examples, I did a white cowboy boot and I added a little bouquet of flowers onto the front. My background was using the checkered stencil, so I did wheat cardstock with wheat ink. I did some splatters of actually using my nutmeg re-inker for brown splatters and then some white paint. Did the howdy on the front and then additional stars in the background. I love how that card came out. And the second card that I created was using some ink blending. So I did like harbor ink towards the top, wheat ink blending towards the bottom. I filled in the scene with the cactuses, and then this is where I used the stamp layering boot. I die cut them out so I could pop them up on the front of the card. Again, I have some stars to fill in there because stars just seem to really fit in with the cowboy theme, and then my stamped sentiment yeehaw. This is just an individual look at the boots that I created because I love them so much. And that is a closer look at the Bootcut Stamp and Die bundle. Welcome to the introduction to the Checkered Stencil Pack. Now, there are 4 stencils in this pack, and it's going to create 2 different designs, which you can see printed on the back. These stencils measure 4 3/4 inches by 6 inches, so it's going to cover an A2 size card front nicely. So we'll take a look at each design separately. Now, this first design is going to create kind of a wavy checkered pattern across your card front. And on each of the stencils, it does have these little registration marks. So you can line those registration marks that are etched on the stencil, line it up with the corner of your cardstock that is cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. The next set of stencils is going to give you more of that classic checkered look. So it's going to be just kind of straight across and not have that wavy line. Again, there are etched markings on the stencil. Always make sure, especially for the wavy pattern, that the Concord and Ninth etching is face up on your stencil. And then you can use those etchings as guides. Now on this one, there are little lines in between the checkers. There's one on the top and one on the side to help you line that up with your A2 size card print. I have a few examples that I played with off screen to show you what these would look like on your card panels. So this one is a white cardstock where I ink blended 2 different shades of blue, and it's going to create that wavy pattern. Really fun for poolside backgrounds. This one I did in red. It's actually cranberry ink, and then I also did one in poppy ink. Now, if you use the straight pattern with the red, I think it would make a really great picnic blanket. Now, if you do a little bit of masking and use your blending brushes, your small blending brushes, you can actually change up each square into a different color of ink. This is where I was just kind of experimenting to get a feel of how that would be, and it is really easy to do. My first card example I have here for you is a rainbow background, which is kind of a go-to when I'm starting out with playing with a brand new stencil. I actually did each layer, so the 2 different layers of the stencil, in a rainbow color assortment going diagonally across the front of the card. And then I went back over those areas very lightly with my blending brush to make it so it's not so stark white. The sentiment, "Have a fantastic day," comes from the Delightful Day bundle. That one was the regular checkered pattern, but now we have this wavy one, which looks really great for a poolside background. I did this one on Harbor cardstock, and I inked it up with Harbor and Tide Pool ink for my checkers in the background. And the girl on the tube comes from the Poolside Bundle. Using these stencils with the same color ink on the same color cardstock makes for a great subtle background to keep the focus on your image. And that is the Checkered Stencil Bundle, available over at Concord and Ninth. This is the introduction to the Defined Stamp Set Bundle. This is a large stamp set filled with 10 sentiments, plus you also have some images down at the bottom that you can use together with sentiments or separately on their own. There is also a coordinating die that we will go over. So these 10 sentiments are very unique as they have the sentiment like friend, and then they have the definition of it. So once again, Concord and Ninth has provided some inspiration on the back of the packaging to show you how you could stamp or die cut those out along with the additional images. Now, I did stamp all of these sentiments out, maybe to be a little bit easier to read on screen. I just stamped them in black ink onto white cardstock. And these are going to be super fun to add to the front of your card panels. There's even kind of a extra one down at the bottom if you find that you just need a little bit more to say when life gets hard. You can also see the images stamped down in the bottom of that panel, and then there's a coordinating die to die cut those pieces out. Now, once you die cut them out, you can there's that sprig on there, and you can use your pick and place tool to pick up those smaller flowers and kind of decorate the flowers onto that sprig. You can make little floral arrangements, but you can also just stamp these directly onto a card front if you don't want to die cut them out. For the rectangle dies, you have a straight edge rectangle and then you have this scalloped one. Now, both of these will work to die cut out any of the sentiments. You can use that straight edge rectangle, you can use the scalloped one, or you can use them together, which you will see in my card example. So you could create kind of a scalloped layer behind your die cut sentiment. So in my first card example that I'm going to share with you, I had heat embossed the sentiment and then I die cut it out with the straight edge rectangle and then added a piece of cardstock die cut from sorbet cardstock to give it that scalloped edge or that matte layer in the background. I used the Checkered stencil on Nectar cardstock with Nectar ink for kind of a subtle background, and the flowers come from the Bootcut Stamp Set that I just have kind of coming out of the top like a flower box. I used it again here on one of my other cards that I created with the Posies Inlay. I love having that scalloped in the red cardstock that matches some of my red flowers in the background. And then my next card is where I stamped it directly onto my card front. So I didn't use any of those scalloped or straight edge rectangles. I ink blended a background with some pink and yellows. And then I also have these silhouette flowers down at the bottom, and those come from the Bootcut Bundle. So I just die cut them out of black cardstock, layered them together, and the circle window I was able to create using the Poolside Bundle. With so many sentiments on this stamp set, it is a very versatile bundle. And that is a closer look at the Defined Bundle set. Welcome to the introduction to the Delightful Day Turnabout Stamp and Die. This is a beautiful turnabout that will create this floral background. You can see on the back of the packaging, you can do 1, 2, 3, and 4 turns will get you the complete design. Also included with your turnabout is the alignment guide to help you align that in your MISTI stamping tool, which I will show you a little later on in this video how to stamp it out. Also included are some additional sentiments and some individual floral images. The sentiments include "You deserve it," "I think you're," and then that would go with the word "fantastic" over in the included die set. "Have a lovely day," and "Thanks for thinking of me." And then I stamped out the individual images of the flower. We have a stem and then some leaves. I did go ahead and create some backgrounds that I wanted to share with you in some really fun color combinations. This first one is very vibrant. I used blueberry, dragon fruit, harbor, and lemongrass. I'm pretty sure I got that off of the color inspiration on the Concord and Ninth website. And then this one is grapefruit, eucalyptus, watermelon, and lemongrass. And then one background I stamped all in Tide Pool ink. There are these large sentiment dies that you can use for the front of your card. Have a delightful day, have a beautiful day, so you can switch those out. You have a backer that you can die cut out of white cardstock or colored cardstock, which you'll see in one of my examples. And then the words and that banner, you can die cut out of a colored cardstock and then just switch up the word. So the word is die cut right out of that banner. This is a look at the flowers when you die cut them out so you can arrange them individually on your card front, or you can stamp them directly onto your card panel, either way. And then there's the word fantastic. So you can have just a plain banner and then add the word fantastic over the top, or use that on its own in coordination with the sentiments on the stamp set. Now I'll go ahead and show you how to use your Turnabout. So I already have mine set up in my Misty stamping tool. I'm using my Turnabout jig and a piece of white cardstock that is cut to 4¼ by 5½ that I'm using in the portrait orientation on my grid. Now I always kind of press over my stamp to make sure there's no air bubbles. Air bubbles are what is going to end up transferring ink where you don't want it. So I always just kind of lift up the stamp a little bit and make sure there's no air bubbles in there. I have my Turnabout jig positioned, so up in the top right-hand corner, it shows a number 1, and I'm stamping down in grapefruit ink. I'm recreating one of the examples that I shared with you. When I stamped it down, I noticed I did not have complete coverage over in the bottom left-hand side. That was operational error. So because my Turnabout is tucked nicely in that bottom left-hand corner of my Misty stamping tool, I'm just going to ink it up again, which is also going to make the ink come out a little bit darker once it's dry. I'm going to turn my Turnabout jig so that the number 2 is up in the top right-hand corner. I cleaned off my stamp and then I also rubbed my hand over it to remove any excess water from my stamp chamois that I used. We want to always make sure that we're starting with our stamp dry. Now my second turn is going to be using the lemongrass ink. So I inked that up, stamped it down. This is my second turn. I'll clean off my stamp set. I'm going to turn my jig so that I have the number 3 up in that top right-hand corner. And the next color I'm coming in with is watermelon. Again, once I'm done stamping this, I will clean off my stamp set and I'm going to turn my jig so that the number 4 is up in the top right-hand corner. Now, there is a lot of ink on the door of my Misty, which transfers to my sidebar there with the ruler on my Misty stamping tool. So I'm always very careful when I'm touching things not to pick up any ink that would transfer onto my cardstock. Then my last turn here is going to be using eucalyptus, and that's going to complete my turnabout background. So I will pick up my jig and I kind of bend it in half and let my cardstock kind of just pop up. So now I have that background ready to turn into a card, but I do want to show you some cards I already completed. Now this background that I did is using Midnight, Tide Pool, Stardust, and Fig. It is a beautiful color combination. And then I did my backer or my shadow layer for the sentiment in Tide Pool cardstock. I could die cut out the word fantastic out of blueberry. So I'm using the colors in my background. And then the words are going to be die cut from white cardstock. And then my next example is actually using these smaller elements or the smaller images off of the stamp set. So I stamped them out and used the coordinating die to die cut it out and created a little floral arrangement down in the bottom right-hand corner. I used just the individual banner from Stardust cardstock and die cut the word fantastic from some silver foil cardstock and have that sentiment stamped up above. And that is your complete introduction to the Delightful Day Turnabout Stamp and Die Set. Welcome to the Mystic Moth Inlay Cover Plate. So this cover plate does cover an A2 size card front nicely, which measures 4¼ by 5½. On the back of the packaging, you can see how you can die cut all of these pieces separately. So if you are a big puzzle person, this is going to be great for you, and it allows you so many ways to customize your colors. This is what your A2 size card front will look like when you run that die cover plate over the top. It's going to cut out all of those areas, and then it also has each piece within the moth separate as well. So you just run it through with various shades of cardstock to create your design. So here is an example of a card that I did where I die cut out multiple layers of cardstock, including Buttercup for the moon. I have a pink lemonade, lemongrass, aqua sky, oceanside, and mushroom for the body of the moth. Now also notice on here that there is these gorgeous stitching marks, which you can see very well on this white cardstock that I did. So I ran it through with white cardstock. I used that as my front for my card front. and then another piece of white cardstock underneath. And something that you are going to find very handy with this is double-sided adhesive sheets. I covered an entire card front with the double-sided adhesive, placed that white panel over the top, and then when I started to inlay my die cut pieces, it would just stick down automatically. I don't have to mess with any liquid glue or tape runner. These front panels really are their own artwork, so it's very hard to add a sentiment and cover any of that up. But for this particular one, I use the word daughter, which comes off of the extended family die that is also available now at Concord and Ninth. This next card is where I die cut out that front panel using black cardstock, and then I did the body of the moth in pebble. I also used powder, harbor, and buttercup for my colors. Very striking when you do a light colored moth on black cardstock. The sentiment for this one comes from the Defined Bundle set. A few tools and products that you are going to find be your best friends when using the die cut inlay technique is going to be double-sided adhesive sheets, press and seal, and also either a pair of tweezers or a pick and place tool. So that is the Mystic Moth Inlay Die set, which is available over at Concord and Ninth. Hello everyone, this is your introduction to the Posies Inlay Cover Plate Die. So what this is going to do is create this gorgeous assortment of flowers on the front of your card. Again, with the die cut inlay technique, you can create either an entire panel of the same color flower, or you can die cut it out of multiple colors of cardstock to change up the color of your flowers and your stems and leaves. So for your front panel, this is what it would look like where you are die cutting it out of cardstock and then all of those pieces are going to fall out. So here are a few pieces that I saved and I'll show you how they line up. So you can just pick them up either with your tweezers or a pick and place tool and just line them up and fill it in like a puzzle. So these pieces are all separate, your leaves, your stem. There's actually 3 pieces to the flower. There's the outside, the inside, and then there's a center piece. You could use the same color cardstock for the stem and the leaves, but I thought it was really fun to use 2 different colors. This happens to be parsley and sprout, and then I used, I believe it was either honeycomb or a buttercup for the center of my flower. Now there you may have seen me trying to flip my cardstock piece over, and that is because you'll notice when you die cut pieces out, the die kind of leaves that nice beveled edge. So I wanted to make sure that that was flipped over in the correct direction because it's just going to look nice. So I have a few different card front panels that I created, and I'm going to be turning these into cards. I do have a couple card examples as well, but I just was having a lot of fun. There were very minimal pieces to this, and so I just went through and die cut with a bunch of different colors of cardstock. Now for that background, I had used, I believe it was powder with white flowers, briar rose, sprout, parsley, pink lemonade, and stardust. So that was the first one I showed you. The second one with the blue flowers is where I used white cardstock, and I have harbor, powder, honeycomb, artichoke, and avocado. And then, of course, I did a rainbow, and I loved creating that rainbow piece. It just was so colorful. I had so many pieces left over that I created a second one that I turned into a card. Now I use the Defined Stamp Set for my sentiment, which I heat embossed in white embossing powder onto black cardstock. That one has a pebble base. This is another one of my favorites where I used poppy and nectar for my flowers. I have sea glass and juniper for the leaves, and then again use that Defined Stamp Set for my sentiment with a pebble card base. And now this is one where I just used the flowers. I didn't use the die cut inlay. I was able to match up very easily where the pieces would go for this one. So I created kind of this little grid using the different flowers. And the sentiment, fantastic, was die cut out of the mirror gold from the Delightful Day bundle. Now here I wanted to show you my stash. So I have these little plastic jewelry cases, and when I was die cutting, I saved everything I wasn't using. And it was actually quite easy for me to separate the big flower from the smaller center flower, and I divided them up into their cases. So if I want to make more cards, which you can see I have lots of supplies for, so I can do that, it is going to be very easy for me to pick through that case and find the color flower or leaves that I want. You'll find it very handy to have double-sided adhesive sheets handy, which is what I used to place my cardstock pieces in so I didn't have to mess with any adhesives. Also some press and seal, and maybe a set of tweezers and a pick and place tool. And that is the Posies Inlay Die set available over at Concord and Ninth. Welcome to the introduction to Poolside Stamp and Die Bundle. Included in this set is a 4x6 stamp set with some sentiments and decorative images. And then we have this large die set. And this large die set is going to be able to create an interactive card. And when I say it's an easy interactive card, you guys, it is so easy to do. You are going to love it. Now, I'm also going to be using some cardstock from this neutrals pack to change up the skin color of my people that I'll be creating for my cards. First, let's walk through the stamp set and the images and sentiments included on it. So first off, we have kind of some straight line sentiments like have a beautiful day, you've earned it, the best is yet to come, kick back and relax, today is all about you. But then we have these curved sentiments that are going to fit around your inner tube. We have some smaller images that you can use to decorate your bathing suits or your inner tubes. And then you have a turn sentiment and an arrow. And then there's these stripes, which I will be using to decorate my beach blankets. Here's a look at some of the larger dies included in the set. I have numerous inner tubes on here. Some I did from regular cardstock, some I did with glitter cardstock, and then there is one where I stamped my image from the stamp set to create a patterned inner tube. So now here that I was pointing to is our hat for our bathing girl. This one is the one I was talking about where I stamped those leaves to do a decorative inner tube. That one I just pointed at the top there, that kind of wavy, reminds me of Monopoly or the Game of Life kind of die, is actually used to decorate your inner tubes. These smaller ones, there is a smaller circle at the top. I know it looks like a donut. It's not a donut. It could be a donut, but it's actually a smaller inner tube for our smaller people that I will be creating. There was no real easy way to do this. There are some smaller image or small dies on this set that I will be pointing out to you, but you can create people sunbathing, whether at the beach, at the lake, floating on inner tubes. Here, I'm going to place them on cardstock and try and show you. You have a variety of poses, I guess we would say. You have some where the people have their hands either behind their head, they could be laying face down, face up. It just depends on how you decorate them, I guess. Some can be wearing hats. We have different outfits for the girls. We have some swimming trunks for the guys. And then there's also some different hair accessories, or I guess hair pieces you could add to make it look like they're either laying face down or face up. So I'll bring in the die set and I'm going to try and point out where those pieces are because they could be kind of confusing. So up here we have two poses. That's for you can use to have their one hand behind their head or standing up. Down there at the bottom is the hands behind the head. We have a beach blanket, a hat for our larger girl. These dies all grouped together are our swimming trunks, our bathing suit, and our bikini. Then we have some hair accessories. That's what those two were. Those two small pieces there, those two small circles actually layered together to create the top view of a hat. So super creative how that was done. And then there's also a heart. Then we have that smaller circle that I was talking about earlier. Not a donut, but could be a donut if you really wanted it to be. We actually had a donut inner tube. So that's why donuts is on the brain. So that creates the small inner tube for your smaller people. I really like how some of these smaller dies are grouped together so they're not going to be easily lost. So before we create the interactive piece, I want to show you how it works. So what it does is you have this larger figure person on an inner tube, and I have that handle there. It says turn, and all you need to do is just kind of slide that down, and it's going to have her kind of turning on her inner tube. Now, I look a little awkward turning this right now because I had just painted my fingernails. I'm so sorry. So I'm trying to be careful that I'm not smearing anything on my cardstock, but very easy to turn, and it's just a really fun interactive card. The pieces you are going to need off of the die set to create this interactive piece are these 5 circles all lined up together. It's one piece. You need the larger circle that'll create your inner tube, kind of that popsicle looking or sucker looking die, and then that one down at the bottom that has the tabs on the end. So I have my inner tube die cut out with its decorative pieces. I have that like sucker looking one. Now it's hard to see, but the die is going to etch onto your cardstock. It's going to say the word glue. And that is telling us where we need to put our glue. So I love that Concord and Ninth does that for us. We have those 5 circles we die cut out, that kind of lollipop looking one, and then our tab one. So before you do anything, what I recommend is you layer up your 5 circles with some liquid glue. You want to do this first, make sure they are all stacked nicely, and then give it time to dry. And you don't want any excess glue on the edges. This is what's going to help create our interactive piece, but I do have a little trick that I think is going to help us later. So I stacked mine up, I wiped the edges to make sure there's no glue, and then I'm going to set that off on the side and place something heavy on it. So while that's drying, I'm going to create my inner tube and show you how I kind of started to work with that. So that you can die cut out of any color of cardstock. Some of my inner tubes, I used glitter cardstock on them. And what I like to do is use the liquid glue. I apologize for my head kind of popping in once in a while, but there are curved edges on these smaller die cut pieces that line up with the inside curved edge of your inner tube. And that's why you see my head popping in. I wanted to make sure that everything was getting lined up correctly. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that lollipop looking type of die cut cardstock piece, and in the center of it, it says the word glue, and there's also a little etched line on there, and you'll see it a lot better in person. I'm just taking my stacked circles and placing it right onto the top of that, and then again, letting something heavy sit on that for a little bit. Now I can bring in my person that's going to be on the inner tube. I use the Neutrals cardstock pack to die cut out my person or my woman. And I did a black cardstock bathing suit. So you're going to see that there is a separate piece that creates this leg, and that's going to go over the top. So I start at the feet or at the foot, line that up, and then press down. It kind of gives more of a realistic look, adds that dimension. We have our hat here that's going to line up on the top, and there's an additional hat piece to again create dimension with the hat, which would be really fun in maybe a different shade. Maybe I could have used a dark gray to go with the black hat. I just really loved the black bathing suit because it's going to stand out really well against my bright yellow inner tube. This is a stenciled background I did with the Checkered stencil pack. I did it on Harbor cardstock with Harbor ink. Now, if you look at the back of the packaging, you're going to see how this die lines up. There is kind of that edge to it. This is going to line up right at the top edge of your cardstock, not on your cardstock, but right on the outside edge. Also on the die, you're going to notice there is some etched words on here. So Concord and Ninth went ahead and put that on there. It says align with the long edge of your card. Long edge meaning the 5.5. So if you cut your panel to 4.25 by 5.5, this is always going to line up on the longest side of your card front. But of course, once you start putting your card together, you can have this be a portrait landscape, or you can have it be in the portrait or landscape orientation. So I'm taking the die, I'm lining it up right up against the edge of the cardstock, and then I'm going to hold it in place with a low tack tape. I am using Post-it tape, and then I'm going to run that through the die cut machine. Once I bring it back in, it's going to die cut out a circle, and then it's also going to die cut out kind of that flap right there. And this is what's going to be helping our interactive piece. Now we are going to take our piece that we had set off on the side before that we had added our little glue circle stack to. Again, make sure it is dry, secured in place. And what I thought would be really helpful is taking an anti-static powder tool. And I am going to brush that around the edge of my stacked circles to help remove maybe any stickiness. I do this a lot when I'm creating shaker cards, so I thought it would be really helpful to do on this. But you always want to make sure it is nice and dry. I'm also going to use that powder just kind of around the edge of my circle where that is going to go through. Then we are going to take this piece and we are going to slide it in between that slit that we created. So right in between there, we're going to just slide that whole thing under, and those stacked circles are going to fit right through that die cut circle we created with the die. So I'm just going to use my thumbs and gently press down. We're actually not going to see this in the end card. Our inner tube and our person is going to be over the top. So I'm just going to push down really well to secure that in place. We are not gluing this down. We are just letting the fitting of it, because it's such a tight fit, we're going to let the fitting of it be what secures it in place. So once you start moving your lever, it's going to give us that interactive motion. For our inner tube, we have our inner tube done, and then we have this other piece that's got these tabs on the edge. So on each of the tabs, there is a part that's kind of curved, and that's going to line up with our inner tube. It says glue that the die provided on there, so I'm adding a little bit of glue to the top and bottom tab, and then lining the curved edge of that with the curved edge of my inner tube. Now this piece we want to add to the front of our card panel before we add our swimmer onto there, because otherwise we can't see what we're doing. I forgot that step, so that's why mine looks a little rough right here. So always add your inner tube first. Now you're going to notice, so there's our circle that we kind of poked through the hole of our card front, and then our circle that's right there in the center of our inner tube. Just attach those with a little bit of liquid glue. Then I can add a dot of liquid glue to the center, and that is where I'm going to attach my person that's going to be floating on the inner tube. So look how relaxed and chill she looks. And it's going to be so fun when this is dry and I start turning the handle. But of course, before you start attaching everything, you'll want to make sure you stamp the word turn or use the arrow on that handle so the recipient knows what to do. And then also maybe stamping your sentiments. I like to create one as a practice run so that I know what I'm doing, and then once I create the final project, I know where I want to stamp everything. And I do that with almost every interactive card is I always create kind of a practice run first. Now we can come back to my final card project for this one. This is where I have this bright red bathing suit and kind of a nice mini rainbow of color, I'm going to call it. I did the wavy checkered stencil in the background. I have that turn that I stamped on the handle. To be perfectly honest, I stamped the word turn and my sentiment at the bottom after I completed the card. I just was super careful and made sure I didn't have any excess ink anywhere. So really fun and super easy interactive card. If you've never tried an interactive card, this is definitely the time to do it because it's easy to put together. And it doesn't have to be interactive. You could just use the inner tube and the person on its own. Now, this is a card I did with the smaller images from the set. I used that striped stamp to stamp onto my beach blanket. I have my people sunbathing, and I did some ink blending. So I did light blue at the top and then wheat ink at the bottom, and I kind of had a meet. So it looks like I have a girl tubing out on the lake, and then the other ones are enjoying the sun on the beach. One thing I do want to note is for the interactive piece, I created the card front on its own, and then after I was done, attached it to a side folding card base. That way it's going to hide that interactive portion on the back of the panel. And that's your introduction to the Poolside Stamp and Die Bundle. Now available at Concord and Ninth.